The sun hung high over Ouagadougou, the beating heart of Burkina Faso, casting long shadows across the dusty streets of the capital city. It was the kind of afternoon where heat shimmered off the pavement, where children sought shade under baobab trees, and where the city seemed to move in slow motion, conserving energy against the relentless West African sun. President Ibrahim Traoré sat in the back of his armored vehicle, reviewing documents for the day's inspection. His convoy moved deliberately through the streets, a procession of authority and purpose. Today's agenda was clear: inspect the progress of the National Housing Development Program, one of his administration's most ambitious projects. Thousands of new homes were being constructed to address the severe housing shortage that plagued his nation. It was work he believed in deeply, work that kept him awake at night with both worry and hope. As the motorcade approached the construction site on the city's eastern edge, the president looked up from his papers. Through the tinted windows, he could see the skeleton of future homes: concrete foundations, half-built walls, scaffolding reaching toward the sky like the promises of a better tomorrow. Workers moved like ants across the site, their labor a testament to progress. But then his eyes drifted beyond the construction zone. There, not more than 100 meters from where homes were being built, stretched a vast landfill. It was an obscene monument to waste and neglect. Mountains of plastic bottles catching the sunlight, rotting food releasing waves of stench into the air, twisted metal and broken furniture creating a landscape of abandonment. Smoke rose from small fires where scavengers burned cables to extract copper. The contrast was jarring, almost offensive. Hope and despair existing side by side, separated only by a fence and a chasm of circumstance. President Traoré had seen poverty before. He had grown up understanding struggle, had witnessed the daily battles of ordinary people trying to survive. But something about this particular moment felt different. Perhaps it was the proximity, the bitter irony of building homes while people lived in garbage. Perhaps it was the weariness in his own soul, the weight of leadership pressing down on him after months of difficult decisions. Then he saw her. At first she was just a silhouette against the garbage heap, a figure so still she might have been part of the landscape itself. But as the convoy slowed, President Traoré's focus sharpened. It was a young woman, couldn't be more than 25 years old, sitting on what appeared to be a broken plastic chair. Her clothes were little more than rags, stained with dirt and use. Her hair was covered with a faded cloth that had once been colorful, but was now dulled by sun and hardship. But it was what she held that stopped the president's breath. Two tiny babies, wrapped in threadbare pieces of fabric, cradled against her chest. Twins. Their small faces were barely visible, their bodies so fragile they seemed almost translucent in the harsh sunlight. The young mother's face was turned down toward them, her shoulders curved protectively, her entire being focused on those two small lives despite the hell that surrounded her. President Traoré felt something crack inside his chest, a mixture of rage and sorrow so powerful it left him breathless. How could this be happening? How could a mother and her newborn children be living literally in garbage, while he, just meters away, was inspecting housing projects? The disconnect was too painful, too immediate to ignore. He said, "Stop the car." His chief of security, Colonel Diallo, turned from the front seat. "Monsieur le Président?" "Stop the car." This time the words carried weight, the kind of tone that left no room for discussion. The entire convoy lurched to a halt. Vehicles behind them stopped abruptly, security personnel immediately going on high alert, scanning for threats, trying to understand why the presidential motorcade had stopped in the middle of nowhere, next to a garbage dump of all places. Before anyone could protest, President Traoré opened his door and stepped out into the afternoon heat. The smell hit him immediately, an overwhelming mixture of decay, burning plastic, and human waste. It was the smell of poverty, of society's failures made tangible. Several of his security detail rushed to form a protective circle around him, their faces masks of professional concern. "Your Excellency, this area has not been secured," Colonel Diallo said urgently, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. The president waved him off. "I'm not here for security. I'm here for her." He pointed toward the young woman, who had now noticed the commotion and was staring at the approaching group with wide, frightened eyes. President Traoré walked slowly across the broken ground, his polished boots crunching on debris. With each step, he could see more details. The woman's hands were rough and scarred, the kind that came from hard labor. Her eyes were sunken, ringed with dark circles of exhaustion and malnutrition. The babies she held were eerily quiet, not the healthy crying of well-fed infants, but the dangerous silence of children too weak to protest their hunger. When she saw the president approaching, really saw him, recognized the uniform, the insignia, the unmistakable bearing of authority, she tried desperately to stand. Her legs shook with the effort, and she clutched her babies tighter, as if afraid they might be taken from her. "Please," President Traoré said gently, raising both hands in a gesture of peace. "Please, sister, don't stand. I've come to talk, not to cause you trouble." The young woman froze, confusion and fear warring across her features. Leaders didn't come to places like this. Presidents didn't walk through garbage dumps. This had to be a dream, or worse, a prelude to being removed, arrested for the crime of existing in the wrong place. The president looked around and spotted an old wooden crate, half crushed but still intact. He dragged it over and sat down directly beside her, at eye level, close enough that the smell of the dump clung to both of them equally. His security detail exchanged alarmed glances. This was unprecedented. This was protocol shattered into 1,000 pieces. But something in the president's bearing told them this moment was sacred, that their job now was simply to bear witness. "What is your name?" the president asked softly, his voice carrying none of the authority of office, only the gentle curiosity of one human to another. The young woman's lips trembled. "Fatima," she whispered. "My name is Fatima, monsieur." "Fatima." President Traoré repeated the name as if it were important, as if committing it to memory. "It's a beautiful name. And these?" He gestured gently to the babies. Fresh tears spilled down Fatima's cheeks. "My children. My twins. They are 3 months old." 3 months, the president echoed, his own voice thick with emotion. "And you are living here, in this place?" Fatima's shoulders began to shake with sobs she could no longer contain. The story came out in broken fragments, punctuated by tears and long pauses where she struggled to find words adequate to her suffering. She had been a student once, she told him, not at a university, her family couldn't afford that, but at a technical school where she was learning to be a seamstress. She had dreams then, small but genuine dreams of opening her own shop one day, of making enough money to help her younger siblings attend school. Then she met Abu. He was handsome, charismatic, working as a motorcycle taxi driver. He said all the right things, made all the right promises. He spoke of marriage, of a future together, of the family they would build. Fatima, young and inexperienced in matters of the heart, believed every word. When she became pregnant, she thought it was the beginning of their life together. Instead, it was the beginning of her nightmare. Abu disappeared the day she told him she was carrying twins. No goodbye, no explanation, he simply vanished like smoke. Fatima went to his family, desperate for help or at least acknowledgement. But they turned her away. claiming they had never heard of her, that she was trying to trap their son with lies. Her own family, deeply traditional and shamed by her unwed pregnancy, gave her an ultimatum: terminate the pregnancy or leave their home. Fatima refused to end the lives growing inside her, so she found herself on the streets, alone and increasingly desperate as her belly grew. She managed to find work washing clothes for wealthy families, but as her pregnancy advanced, even that dried up. No one wanted a pregnant girl around, especially one without a husband. She slept in doorways, in market stalls after closing, anywhere she could find shelter. When her labor began, it was in the middle of the night, in an alley behind a restaurant. The pain was so intense she thought she would die. A kind stranger found her and took her to the public hospital, where she gave birth to her twins after 18 hours of labor that left her weak and traumatized. The babies were premature, underweight, requiring special care. Fatima stayed in the hospital for 3 weeks, watching her children in incubators, praying that they would survive. And they did. Miraculously, they grew stronger. But then came the bill. The hospital demanded payment before she could leave. 185,000 CFA francs, roughly $300. It might as well have been $1 million. Fatima had nothing. No money, no family, no abu to help shoulder the cost. She begged the hospital administrators, pleaded for mercy, but bureaucracy has no heart. They kept my national ID card, Fatima explained, her voice hollow. They said I couldn't leave until I paid, but they also couldn't keep the babies there indefinitely. So they released us, but kept my papers. Without my ID, I can't get formal work. I can't access any services. I'm a ghost in my own country. With nowhere else to go, Fatima found her way to this dump. She had heard that people made money collecting recyclables, and desperation made her brave. She started scavenging, picking through garbage for plastic bottles, metal scraps, anything that could be sold to recycling companies for a few coins. I make maybe 500 to 1,000 francs a day if I'm lucky, $1 or $2. It's enough to buy a little rice, maybe some milk powder for the babies, but it's not enough for rent, not enough for proper food, not enough to live like a human being. President Traoré listened to every word, his jaw clenched with anger, not at her, but at the cascade of failures that had led to this moment. A system that abandoned young women, a culture that shamed single mothers, an economy that couldn't provide for its most vulnerable, a society that looked away from suffering when it became inconvenient to witness. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement so as not to startle her, and gently touched one of the baby's cheeks. The child's skin was warm but dry, stretched too tightly over tiny bones. The baby stirred slightly, making a weak mewing sound that broke the president's heart. "What are their names?" he asked. I haven't named them yet," Fatima admitted, her shame evident. "I was waiting to see if they would survive. So many babies die here, monsieur. I was afraid to name them, afraid to love them too much in case God took them from me." President Traoré felt tears threatening and didn't bother to stop them. Let his guards see, let the world see. Some moments demanded tears. "Listen to me, Fatima," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Today, everything changes. You will not spend another night in this place. These children will not grow up in garbage. You have my word, and when a president gives his word, he must keep it, or he is not fit to lead." Fatima stared at him in disbelief. But I am nobody. Why would you help me?" "Because you are not nobody," President Traoré replied, holding her gaze. "You are a mother. You are a daughter of Burkina Faso. You are a young woman who has survived impossible circumstances with 2 babies who depend on you. That doesn't make you nobody. That makes you a hero." By now, word had spread. People began emerging from shacks cobbled together from corrugated metal and plastic sheeting, the permanent residents of the dump's periphery. Children came running, their faces curious and hopeful. Women carrying bundles of salvaged goods stopped to stare. Men who spent their days sorting through garbage for survival stood at a respectful distance, watching this impossible scene unfold. President Traoré stood and addressed the growing crowd. His voice carried across the dump, strong and clear. "My brothers and sisters, today I came here to inspect houses being built for our people. But God brought me here to this place to meet Fatima and her children. Do you know why? Because we cannot build houses and pretend we don't see those who have no houses at all. We cannot speak of development while our sisters live in refuse. We cannot call ourselves a nation if we abandon our most vulnerable." The crowd murmured in agreement, some calling out "Amen," and "It's true." "I make this promise to you now," the president continued, his voice rising with passion. "The programs we are building, they are not just for some people, they are for all people. Starting today, we will create special provisions for single mothers, for widows, for those whom society has forgotten. No more will women like Fatima have to choose between dignity and survival." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Some people wept openly, others began ululating, the high-pitched cry of celebration that carries for miles. Children jumped up and down with excitement they didn't fully understand but felt in their bones. President Traoré turned to Colonel Diallo. "Call ahead to the palace. I want the following arranged immediately. Temporary housing for Fatima and her children, medical care for all three of them, food supplies for the week, and I want our social services director to meet with her tomorrow morning. Also, pay her hospital debt, all of it, and get her national ID card returned." Colonel Diallo nodded sharply and began speaking rapidly into his radio, issuing orders that would cascade through multiple government departments. The president looked back at Fatima, who was now sobbing uncontrollably, her tears falling onto her babies' faces. "Come," he said gently, "let me help you to the car." "But, Monsieur le Président," she protested weakly, "my car." "Is just a car," he interrupted. "You are a human being. You matter more than any vehicle." What happened next would be replayed on social media thousands of times, becoming one of the most iconic moments in Burkina Faso's modern history. President Ibrahim Traoré, leader of the nation, bent down and carefully took one of the twins from Fatima's arms. The baby, swaddled in rags, rested against his military uniform. The president adjusted his hold with the natural grace of someone who understood children, who perhaps had held his own children this way once. He began walking towards his vehicle, cradling the infant with extraordinary tenderness. The security detail scrambled to adjust, forming a protective bubble around the president, Fatima, and the babies as they made their way across the dump. Photographers in the convoy, who had been setting up for routine shots of the construction site, began frantically capturing this unexpected scene. Fatima walked by the president, still carrying her second child, her legs shaking from exhaustion and overwhelming emotion. She kept looking at him as if expecting him to vanish, to reveal this as some cruel joke. But he remained solid, real, holding her baby as if it were the most natural thing in the world. When they reached the presidential vehicle, there was a moment of hesitation from the security staff. The protocols were clear. Only cleared individuals could enter the president's car. This woman from the dump certainly wasn't on any approved list. President Traoré read their hesitation, and his voice took on an edge of command. "Open the door, now." The door was opened immediately. The president helped Fatima into the vehicle first, making sure she was comfortable before handing her baby back to her. Then he climbed in beside her, his military uniform now marked with dust from the dump, his boots no longer polished. "Before we go anywhere else," he announced, "we're stopping at the supermarket." The presidential convoy moving through Ouagadougou always turned heads, but when it pulled up to the Capital Hypermarket, one of the city's largest grocery stores, confusion rippled through the parking lot. Presidents didn't shop at supermarkets. They sent staff. They had supplies delivered. They certainly didn't show up unannounced in the middle of the afternoon. Inside the store, Aminata Ouedraogo was having an ordinary day managing the customer service desk. She was helping an elderly man return a defective radio when she heard the commotion at the entrance. Security personnel speaking urgently into radios, store managers suddenly moving with purpose, shoppers beginning to whisper and point. Then President Traoré walked in. He wasn't alone. Beside him walked a young woman in dirty clothes holding two small babies. The contrast was jarring, the president in his clean military uniform and this woman who looked like she had been pulled from poverty itself. Aminata's hand went to her mouth in shock. Everyone in the store seemed to freeze, unsure what they were witnessing. The president moved through the aisles with purposeful direction, heading straight for the baby section. Fatima followed, her eyes wide, overwhelmed by the sheer abundance surrounding her. Shelves upon shelves of products, more than she had seen in her entire life. "We'll start here," President Traoré said, beginning to select items. He took baby formula, reading labels carefully. "This one has the extra nutrients for premature babies," he explained to Fatima. He loaded 6 large containers into the shopping cart that a nervous store employee had rushed over to provide. Then came diapers. The president selected multiple packages in different sizes. "They'll grow quickly if they're getting proper nutrition," he said with a smile that made Fatima's heart clench. Baby bottles, pacifiers, soft blankets, tiny clothes in yellows and greens. The cart began to fill. The president moved with the focused efficiency of a father who had done this before, who understood what babies needed. Then he moved to the women's section. "You need clothes too," he told Fatima firmly when she began to protest. "You cannot take care of your children if you are not cared for yourself." He selected dresses, simple, practical, but new and clean. Shoes that would actually fit and protect her feet. A warm jacket for the cool evenings. Undergarments and hygiene products, everything a person would need to live with basic dignity. Other shoppers had gathered at a respectful distance, their phones out recording this extraordinary moment. Some were crying, others whispered prayers, a few simply watched in stunned silence. An elderly woman approached cautiously. "Monsieur le Président," she said, her voice wavering with emotion, "may God bless you for what you're doing. This is what leadership looks like." President Traoré turned to her and smiled warmly. "No, grandmother, this is what basic human decency looks like. We shouldn't be surprised by kindness. We should expect it." At the checkout, the total came to 247,500 francs CFA. The president handed over his personal credit card without hesitation. As the clerk processed the payment with trembling hands, Fatima suddenly collapsed. Her knees simply gave out, the emotional and physical exhaustion finally overwhelming her system. She went down, still clutching her babies, protecting them even in her fall. The president caught her before she hit the ground, his arms strong and steady. "Someone get water," he called out, "and a chair." Store employees rushed to help. Water was brought, a chair produced. The president kneeled beside Fatima as she sat, holding the water bottle to her lips while she drank in small sips. The babies, disturbed by the commotion, began to cry, thin, weak cries that spoke of hunger. "We need to feed these children," the president said urgently. "Can someone prepare formula, now?" 2 employees rushed to prepare bottles. The president took one baby while Fatima held the other, and together they fed the twins right there in the middle of the supermarket. The children drank greedily, their tiny hands clutching at the bottles. The entire store had gone quiet, watching this scene unfold. A president feeding babies, a leader kneeling on a supermarket floor. It was so contrary to every expectation of power and authority that it seemed to crack something open in every witness. A realization that perhaps leadership could look different, could be different. When the babies had finished feeding and been burped, the president expertly patting one baby's back until a satisfying burp emerged, he stood and addressed the crowd that had gathered. "My friends," he said, his voice carrying through the store, "I want you to remember this day. Remember that every person you see has a story. The woman you pass on the street, the child begging at the intersection, the elderly man sleeping in a doorway, each of them is someone. Each of them matters. We cannot build a strong nation if we only care about ourselves." Someone in the crowd started clapping. It began slowly, then built into sustained applause that echoed through the supermarket. People were openly weeping, moved by something they couldn't quite name but felt deeply. As the president prepared to leave with Fatima and the twins, the store manager approached hesitantly. "Your Excellency," he said, "we would like to donate additional supplies for this young mother, and—" he paused, gathering courage. "We would like to establish a fund to help other women in similar situations. Would you allow us to use your example to inspire others?" President Traoré clasped the man's shoulder firmly. "That is exactly what I hoped would happen. Yes, do it, and spread the word. We need everyone involved in building a better Burkina Faso." The convoy made its way through the city, but instead of heading to the presidential palace or a government building, they drove to the outskirts, where the new social housing development stood. This was the Estate of New Beginnings, a project President Traoré had personally championed for widows, single mothers, and abandoned families. Row upon row of modest but dignified houses lined clean streets. Each home was painted in bright colors, yellows, blues, greens, creating a cheerful contrast to the gray poverty so many residents had left behind. Small gardens were being cultivated in front of each house. Solar panels on the roofs provided electricity. A community center stood at the development's heart, where residents could gather, children could study, and programs could be run. Fatima stared out the window in disbelief. She had heard of this place, of course, everyone had, but she never imagined she would see it, let alone live there. The convoy stopped in front of a yellow house with a small porch and a blue door. Number 47, Estate of New Beginnings. "This is yours," President Traoré said simply. Fatima couldn't speak. She literally could not form words. Her throat had closed with emotion, her eyes flooding with tears that blurred her vision. The president helped her out of the vehicle, still carrying one of the twins, and led her to the front door. He produced a key. Someone had radioed ahead and had it prepared, and opened the door. The smell of fresh paint and new things wafted out. Inside was simple but complete. A living area with a couch and chairs, a small kitchen with a refrigerator, stove, and basic cooking supplies already stocked. 2 bedrooms, one with a double bed for Fatima, the other with a crib that had been hastily assembled. Clean floors, working lights, windows with actual glass and curtains. In the bathroom, running water, hot and cold. A toilet that flushed. A shower with clean tiles. Soap and towels already laid out. For Fatima, who had been bathing from buckets and using public latrines when she could access them, who had been sleeping on cardboard and giving birth in alleys, this was overwhelming. This was impossible. This was more than she had ever dared to dream. She walked through the room slowly, touching walls to make sure they were real. She turned on the water tap in the kitchen and watched,
mesmerized, as clean water flowed out. She sat on the couch and felt its softness. She entered the bedroom with the crib and simply stood there, staring at it. President Traoré gave her time, understanding that she needed to process this moment privately. He busied himself, bringing in the supplies from the supermarket, organizing formula and diapers in the kitchen, hanging the new clothes in the bedroom closet. When Fatima emerged, her face was streaked with tears, but for the first time since he'd met her, she was smiling, actually smiling. A transformation so complete it made her look years younger, almost like the girl she had been before life had hardened her. "Monsieur le Président," she began, but he raised a hand gently. "Ibrahim," he said, "when we're here, away from cameras and officials, you can call me Ibrahim." "I cannot." "You can. You must, because I need you to understand something, Fatima." He sat down on the couch and gestured for her to sit beside him. She did, still holding both babies now, their small bodies finally relaxed in sleep, full bellies giving them peace. "I am president, but before that, I am a man who had a mother, who has seen suffering, who believes that leadership means nothing if it doesn't touch real lives. You didn't ask for this help, I offered it, not because you're special or different from others, but because you represent thousands of women suffering in silence. If I can help you, I must. And through helping you, maybe others will be inspired to help more people." Fatima listened, trying to absorb his words.
But, the president said more seriously, this house is not charity. This is your home, yes, but it comes with responsibility. You must work, contribute, build a life. We will help you start a small business. What would you like to do? I was training to be a seamstress, Fatima said softly. Before everything happened. Then we'll get you a sewing machine, provide training to update your skills, help you find clients. But you must put in the effort. Can you do that? Yes, Fatima said fervently. Yes, I will work so hard. I will make you proud. I will... Make yourself proud, the president interrupted gently. That's what matters. I don't need your pride. I need you to reclaim your dignity, to show your children that even when life knocks you down, you can rise. That's the lesson they need to learn from you. There was a knock at the door. Colonel Diallo entered with a woman in a white coat, Dr. Aminata Kone, one of the nation's leading pediatricians. Monsieur le Président, Dr. Kone is here as requested. The doctor came in carrying a medical bag. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an efficient manner. After greeting the president, she turned her full attention to Fatima and the babies. "Let's check on these little ones," she said warmly. "May I?" Over the next 30 minutes, Dr. Kone conducted a thorough examination of both twins. She weighed them, measured them, listened to their hearts and lungs, checked their reflexes. Her face grew increasingly serious. "They are significantly underweight," she finally said, addressing both Fatima and the president. "At 3 months, they should each weigh at least 5 kilos. These children are barely 3 kilos each. They're also dehydrated and showing signs of early malnutrition." Fatima's face crumbled. "I tried. I did everything I could." "I know you did," Dr. Cohn said firmly, taking her hand. "You kept them alive under impossible circumstances. You're a strong mother. But now we need to help them recover. They'll need special formula, regular medical monitoring, probably some supplements. It will take time, but they can recover fully." "Whatever they need," President Traoré interjected. "Whatever it costs, whatever resources are required, these children will have it." Dr. Kone nodded. "I'll arrange for a nurse to visit daily for the first 2 weeks. We'll monitor their weight gain, make sure Fatima knows how to properly prepare formula, and watch for signs of illness.
After that, weekly checkups at the clinic. She turned to Fatima. You also need medical care. You're malnourished too. When did you last eat a proper meal? Fatima had to think about it. I don't remember. Yesterday I had some bread. The day before, rice. Right, Dr. Cohn said decisively. We're starting you on supplements as well. And I'm prescribing proper meals. Protein, vegetables, grains. You can't care for babies if you're wasting away yourself. As the doctor prepared to leave, she turned to President Traoré. You did a good thing today, Monsieur le Président. These children, they would not have survived much longer on the dump. Perhaps another month, maybe less. You saved 3 lives today. After she left, the President and Fatima sat in comfortable silence for a while. The babies slept peacefully in their new crib, their first time ever sleeping in an actual bed. Through the windows, the late afternoon sun cast golden light across the clean floors. I should let you rest, the President finally said, standing. You've had an overwhelming day. The kitchen is stocked with food. Please, eat something. The nurse will come tomorrow morning, and this, he handed her a phone, is so you can call if you need anything. My office number is already programmed in. Fatima took the phone with trembling hands. She had never owned a phone before. Monsieur Ibrahim, she corrected herself. I don't have words. Thank you doesn't seem like enough. Then don't say it, he replied with a smile. Just live, raise your children, build your business, become the woman you were meant to be before life derailed you. That's all the thanks I need. As he reached the door, Fatima called out, Wait, the babies. I need to give them names now. They've survived. They have a home. They deserve names. She thought for a moment, then said firmly, The boy will be called Espoir, hope, and the girl will be Victoire, victory. Because today hope came to us and we achieved victory over despair. That evening, as his convoy finally made its way back to the presidential residence, Ibrahim Traoré sat in silence, processing the day. He had missed the construction site inspection entirely. Several officials would be disappointed, perhaps even angry at the deviation from schedule. But as he thought about Fatima's smile, about baby hope and baby victory sleeping in a clean crib, about the store employees who had been moved to start their own charity fund, about the crowds at the dump who had cheered and wept, he knew this had been far more important than any inspection. Colonel Diallo broke the silence. The media is already running with it, Monsieur le Président. The videos from the supermarket have gone viral. Social media is exploding. Good or bad? The President asked. Overwhelmingly positive. People are calling you President of the People. Some are crying. I've never seen anything like it. The President nodded slowly. Then maybe we've started something. Maybe compassion can be contagious. He stared out the window at his country passing by, a nation of potential and problems, of beauty and struggle. And he thought about all the other Fatimas out there, the ones he hadn't met yet, the ones still sitting in their own versions of that dump. The work had only begun. Within hours, the story of President Traoré and Mama Hope, as she was now being called, had spread throughout Burkina Faso and beyond. The images were everywhere. The president sitting on a crate beside a woman in rags, holding a baby wrapped in poverty, shopping in a supermarket with purpose and tenderness, helping a forgotten mother into his own vehicle. In the digital age, moments of genuine humanity travel fast. By evening, #MamaHope was trending across West Africa. By midnight, international news outlets were picking up the story. Al Jazeera led with, Burkina Faso president stops motorcade to help mother living in a dump. BBC Africa ran When Leadership Looks Different, a President's Unexpected Detour. CNN's Africa correspondent tweeted the supermarket video with one word: humanity. But the real impact was happening on the ground, in the hearts of ordinary people who saw themselves in Fatima's story. In the small village of Tiabele, 300 kilometers from Ouagadougou, a widow named Razmata sat in her mud brick home watching the news on a borrowed television. She had 3 children and no income since her husband had died in a farming accident 2 years ago. She had been contemplating the unthinkable, sending her children to live with relatives because she couldn't feed them anymore. As she watched President Traoré cradle Mama Hope's baby, something shifted inside her. If the president himself believed one struggling mother mattered enough to stop everything for, maybe she mattered too. Maybe her children mattered. Maybe help was possible. The next morning, she walked 8 kilometers to the nearest town office and asked if there were programs for widows. To her shock, there were. Programs she hadn't known about, forms she could fill out, people who listened to her story. Within a week, she would be enrolled in an agricultural cooperative that provided widows with seeds, tools, and training. Her children would stay with her. That same night, in Ouagadougou, a wealthy businessman named Abdoulaye Sawadago sat in his mansion watching the same news coverage. He had made his fortune in telecommunications and had always considered himself a good person. He paid his taxes, employed people, attended mosque regularly. But watching the president shop for baby formula made him uncomfortable in a way he couldn't name. He had wealth beyond measure. His children attended private schools. His wife shopped in Paris. Meanwhile, women were living in garbage dumps with newborns. He called his accountant at 11 p.m. "I want to establish a foundation," he said without preamble, "for single mothers and abandoned children. I want to fund it with 100 million CFA francs to start, and I want it operational within a month." His accountant was stunned into silence. "Did you see what the president did today?" Abdoulaye reminded me that wealth means nothing if it doesn't serve others. I've been hoarding blessings. That ends now. Across the city, in a modest apartment, a young man named Abu sat frozen in front of his phone. He had been scrolling through social media when he saw the videos, and then he saw her face, Fatima. The woman he had abandoned, the mother of his children, children he had never met, never acknowledged, never even thought about in months. And there she was, being lifted from a garbage dump by the president himself, her story of betrayal and survival told to the entire nation. His hands shook. Shame washed over him in waves so powerful he thought he might be sick. He had done this. His cowardice, his selfishness, his weakness, they had put her there, had put his children there. His mother entered the room and saw the videos playing on his phone. Her face drained of color. "Abu," she whispered, is that the girl? The one you said was lying?" He couldn't speak, could only nod. His mother sat down heavily, her hand over her heart. "We turned her away. We called her a liar. And she was telling the truth. Those babies, Abu, those are your children." "I know, Mama, I know. What are you going to do?" Abu looked at his mother, then back at his phone where Fatima's face was frozen in a moment of tears. "I don't know. I don't know if I even have the right to do anything. I destroyed her life." His mother was quiet for a long moment. "You cannot undo what you did.
but you can stop running. Those children have your blood. That woman suffered alone for something you both created. At minimum, you owe her the truth, an acknowledgement, an apology. Maybe she won't accept it. Maybe you don't deserve forgiveness, but you owe her the words." Abu knew she was right, but the thought of facing Fatima, of looking into the eyes of the woman he had destroyed, terrified him more than anything he had ever contemplated. Fatima woke to sunlight streaming through actual windows, momentarily disoriented. For a confused second, she thought she was dreaming. Then she heard her babies cooing softly in the next room and remembered this was real. The house was real. The clean clothes hanging in her closet were real. Hope and Victory were safe, fed, and sleeping in a real crib. She stood slowly, her body aching from months of sleeping on hard ground, and walked to the bedroom where her children lay. They looked different already. Just one night of warmth, cleanliness, and full bellies had brought color to their cheeks. Victory's tiny hand was pressed against Hope's face, the two of them instinctively seeking each other even in sleep. Fatima's heart swelled with a love so fierce it was almost painful. "Good morning, my miracles. Welcome to your new life." A knock at the door startled her. Through the window, she saw a woman in a nurse's uniform carrying a medical bag. This must be the daily nurse Dr. Coney had mentioned. "Good morning," the nurse said warmly when Fatima opened the door. "I'm Nurse Zara. I'm here to check on you and the little ones." Over the next hour, Nurse Zara conducted gentle examinations, showed Fatima proper bathing techniques for newborns, demonstrated how to prepare formula to the exact right temperature and concentration. She was patient, kind, never making Fatima feel stupid for not knowing things that wealthier mothers learned from books and classes. "You're doing wonderfully," Nurse Zara assured her. "These babies are lucky to have such a devoted mother. Many women in your situation would have given up, but you fought for them every single day." After the nurse left, Fatima stood in her kitchen, and made herself breakfast. Real eggs, bread, tea with sugar. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, crying a little because months of near starvation had made her forget what it felt like to not be hungry. At midday, there was another knock. This time, it was a government social worker, a kind-faced woman named Mariam. "Mama Fatima, I'm here to help you get your life fully established. We have a lot to cover." Mariam had brought documents, applications for permanent residency in the estate, enrollment forms for government food assistance until Fatima's business was established, information about free childcare at the community center for when Fatima started working. "The president has also arranged for you to receive vocational training. You mentioned seamstressing? We have a partnership with the National Institute of Fashion and Textiles. They've agreed to accept you into their program, and classes are free. Childcare will be provided during class hours." Fatima could barely process it all. "When do I start?" "Whenever you feel ready, maybe in a week or two. Give yourself time to adjust, to let the babies get stronger." Mariam smiled. "But there's more. A local business owner has donated a professional sewing machine. It will be delivered tomorrow. And several shop owners in the market district have already expressed interest in buying your work once you're trained." "Why?" Fatima whispered. "Why is everyone being so kind?" "Because the president showed us that we should be. He reminded the nation that we're all connected, that your struggle is our struggle. People want to help. They just needed someone to show them how." That evening, Fatima was preparing dinner when she heard a commotion outside. Looking through the window, she saw a small crowd gathering near her house. Her first instinct was fear. Had something gone wrong? Was she being removed? But then she saw their faces, saw what they were carrying. Gifts. Bags of baby clothes, packages of diapers, homemade food, small toys, blankets. A woman at the front of the group called out, "Mama Hope, we are your neighbors. We wanted to welcome you properly."
Fatima opened the door cautiously, and the group approached with warm smiles. "I'm Salamata," said the woman who had spoken. "I live 3 houses down. I'm a widow too. Lost my husband 5 years ago. This estate, it saved my life. Welcome to our family." One by one, the neighbors introduced themselves. Most were women, widows, single mothers, divorced women, but there were also some families who had been homeless or displaced. Each had their own story of hardship and rescue. "We look out for each other here," explained another woman named Fati. "If you need someone to watch your babies while you go to class, we help. If you run short on food before the next assistance payment, we share. We survived because we stick together." Fatima felt tears threatening again, happy tears this time. She had thought she would be alone even in this new house, isolated by her shame and past. Instead, she was being welcomed into a community of survivors, women who understood her journey because they had walked similar paths. They stayed for hours, the women cooking together in Fatima's small kitchen, the children playing, the babies being passed around and cooed over. For the first time since her own family had rejected her, Fatima felt like she belonged somewhere. As the evening wound down and neighbors began heading home, Salamata pulled Fatima aside. She said quietly, "The president did something powerful when he helped you. He didn't just save you, he reminded all of us that we're valuable. Every woman here saw herself in your story. And if he believed you deserved dignity, then maybe we all do. You've given us hope, Mama Hope. Never forget that." 3 weeks passed. Fatima settled into a rhythm. Wake with the babies, feed them, morning visit from Nurse Zara, afternoon classes at the Textile Institute, evenings with her children and sometimes neighbors. Hope and victory were gaining weight steadily, their cries growing stronger, their eyes more alert. Fatima herself was transforming. Proper food had brought color to her face, erased the hollow shadows under her eyes. Clean clothes and the ability to bathe daily restored dignity to her appearance. But the deepest change was internal. She was beginning to believe she deserved this new life, that she was more than her worst moments. Her sewing skills were returning quickly, muscle memory combining with new techniques she was learning. Her instructor, Madame Seraphine, a formidable woman who had been sewing for 40 years, was impressed. She said, "You have natural talent. With proper training and practice, you could build a real business. Wedding dresses, traditional clothing, modern fashion, you could do it all." One afternoon, Fatima was at the market buying fabric for a practice project when she saw him. Abu. He was standing near a fruit stall, and their eyes met across the crowded marketplace. Time seemed to stop. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the months of suffering alone, they crashed over her in a wave so powerful she couldn't breathe. Abu's face went pale. He stood frozen, clearly as shocked as she was. Fatima's first instinct was to run, to disappear before he could approach. But something stopped her. She wasn't the same terrified girl he had abandoned. She was Mama Hope now. She had survived hell. She had been rescued by a president. She was building a life. She stood her ground. Abu approached slowly, cautiously, like someone approaching a wounded animal. When he was a few feet away, he stopped. "Fatima," he said, his voice barely audible. I saw the news. I saw what happened." She said nothing, just stared at him with eyes that held both pain and strength. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he continued, words tumbling out rapidly. "I don't even deserve to speak to you. What I did, leaving you, denying our children, it was cowardice. It was evil. I've been living with the shame of it since I saw your face on television." Shame? Fatima's voice was cold. You felt shame after seeing me on TV? Where was your shame when I was pregnant and terrified? Where was your shame when I was giving birth alone? Where was your shame when your children were sleeping in garbage? Abu flinched as if he had struck him. You're right. You're absolutely right. I was a coward. I am a coward. Those babies nearly died. Fatima continued, her voice now shaking with anger she had never allowed herself to express. Your son and your daughter almost starved to death because of you. I had to dig through garbage to feed them. I had to sleep next to rotting trash to keep them sheltered. And you were in, where? Living comfortably, pretending we didn't exist? I'm sorry, Abu whispered, tears streaming down his face now. I'm so sorry.
Sorry doesn't feed children. Sorry doesn't pay hospital bills. Sorry doesn't keep rain off babies' heads. A crowd was beginning to gather, recognizing Mama Hope, sensing drama. Someone pulled out a phone to record. Abu seemed to notice the attention and looked around nervously. Can we talk somewhere private? Private? Fatima laughed bitterly. You want privacy now? You didn't care about my privacy when you abandoned me publicly, when your family called me a liar in front of neighbors, when I was giving birth in an alley because I had nowhere else to go. You're right. I don't deserve privacy. I don't deserve anything. Abu took a deep breath, then did something unexpected. He knelt down, right there in the market, in the dust, in front of everyone. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said, his voice breaking. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to acknowledge the truth, publicly, the way I should have from the beginning. You told the truth. Those babies are mine. I abandoned you and them, and I will carry that shame forever. The crowd murmured. Some people were recording. Others were whispering to each other. A few women were nodding approvingly at Fatima, silently supporting her. Fatima looked down at this man who had destroyed her life. She had imagined this moment so many times during those dark months, imagined screaming at him, hitting him, making him feel a fraction of the pain he had caused her. But now, seeing him broken and kneeling, she felt empty. Not forgiveness, not satisfaction, just a hollow exhaustion. Stand up, she said quietly. I don't need you on your knees. I need you to be a man, something you weren't before. Abu stood, wiping his face. Hope and victory, that's what I named our children, Fatima continued. They're healthy now, growing strong. They have a home, food, medical care. They will have education and opportunities. And they have a mother who fought for them when no one else would. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I don't know if I'll ever forgive you. Right now, I don't forgive you. But those children, they deserve to know their father, even if their father doesn't deserve to know them. Not now. Maybe not ever. But when they're older, if they ask about you, I won't lie. I'll tell them exactly what happened, both the abandonment and this moment. What can I do? Abu asked desperately. How can I help? Do you need money? Do you need... I don't need anything from you, Fatima interrupted firmly. President Traoré provided everything we needed. Our government provided everything we needed. My community provides what we need. You had your chance to help, and you chose to run. That door is closed. She picked up her bag of fabric, preparing to leave. But, she added, turning back, if you truly want to make amends, don't do it for me or for your children. Do it for the next woman. The next time a young man in your position faces the same choice, be the person who tells him to stay. Be the person who says abandoning your children is unforgivable. Be the person you should have been. With that, Mama Fatima, Mama Hope,
walked away through the marketplace, her head held high, leaving Abu kneeling in the dust of his own mistakes. The video of the confrontation went viral within hours. Opinion was divided. Some thought Fatima should have forgiven him, that everyone deserves a second chance. Others praised her strength, her refusal to let him off easy. But everyone agreed on one thing: she had faced her past with remarkable dignity. When President Traoré heard about the encounter, he sent Fatima a message through Mariam. "You handled yourself like the strong woman you are. Never let anyone, not your past, not your pain, not someone else's regret, diminish your worth." As weeks turned into months, the impact of Mama Hope's story continued to ripple outward. The Sawadogo Foundation, established by the telecommunications businessman, had already helped 30 single mothers get housing and job training. Other wealthy individuals, inspired by the example, were starting similar initiatives. Churches and mosques across Burkina Faso were incorporating discussions of social responsibility into their services. Imams preached about the duty to care for widows and orphans. Priests reminded congregations that faith without action was meaningless.
A popular musician named Sams Kalaja released a song called Mama Hope that became an instant hit. The lyrics told Fatima's story, but made it universal. She carried life while you carried lies. She faced the storm while you ran and hid. But she rose from the ashes, stronger than before. While you're still running, she's walking through the door. The song played everywhere, on radio, in taxis, at market stalls, in nightclubs. Young people sang it, danced to it, internalized its message. Fatima herself continued to live quietly, focused on her children and her studies. She had completed her textile training and had started receiving orders, first from neighbors, then friends of neighbors, then customers who specifically sought out Mama Hope's designs. Her specialty became children's clothing, practical yet beautiful outfits that even poor families could afford. She understood intimately what mothers needed: clothes that could withstand rough play, that were easy to wash, that could be worn by multiple siblings as they grew. Her prices were fair, her quality excellent, her story made every purchase meaningful. She hired 2 other single mothers from the estate to help with increasing orders. Together, they worked in a small shop space the community center had provided, their sewing machines humming in harmony, children playing nearby. One morning, 6 months after her rescue, Fatima received an unexpected visitor. President Traoré arrived without fanfare. Just him and Colonel Diallo, wanting to see how she was doing. Hope and Victory, now 9 months old, were crawling around the shop floor babbling happily. When they saw the president, Victory squealed with delight and crawled toward him at surprising speed. President Traoré laughed and scooped her up. "She remembers me," he said, genuinely delighted. Hope, not to be left out, pulled himself up on the president's pant leg, demanding attention too. "They're beautiful," the president said, holding both babies with practiced ease. "Look how healthy they are, how happy." Fatima beamed with pride. "They're perfect, smart too. Hope is trying to stand already, and Victory said, 'Mama,' last week." They sat together while the babies played, Fatima showing the president some of her recent work: a traditional ensemble for a wedding, a modern dress with African print accents, tiny outfits for newborns that made him smile with their miniature perfection. "You've built something real," the president observed. "This isn't charity anymore. This is a legitimate business." "Because you gave me the chance. Without that day, without you stopping." "Stop," he interrupted gently. "You need to understand something, Fatima. I gave you an opportunity, yes, but you did the work. You chose to fight, to learn, to build. Many people get opportunities and waste them. You seized yours with both hands. That's your achievement, not mine." They talked for an hour, discussing her business plans, the challenges she was facing, her dreams for her children's education.
The president listened more than he spoke, genuinely interested in her perspective. As he prepared to leave, he said, "I want to ask you something, and please feel free to say no. We're planning a national conference on social protection and women's empowerment. Would you be willing to speak, to share your story directly, in your own words?" Fatima's first instinct was panic. I don't speak well. I'm not good with big crowds." "You don't need to be educated to speak truth," the president countered. "Your story, told authentically, will reach people better than any polished speech from a politician or expert, but only if you're comfortable. I won't pressure you." Fatima thought about it, looking at Hope and Victory playing on the floor. They would grow up hearing stories of their mother's past. Wouldn't it be better if those stories included her strength, not just her suffering? "I'll do it," she said finally, "for them and for all the women still living in their own versions of that dump." The National Conference on Social Protection and Women's Empowerment was held in Ouagadougou's largest convention center. Attendees included government ministers, international development experts, NGO representatives, religious leaders, traditional chiefs, and hundreds of ordinary citizens who had applied for tickets to attend. The program was full of impressive speakers, academics with PhDs who presented statistical analyses of poverty, economists who discussed fiscal policy, foreign dignitaries who shared success stories from their countries. Each presentation was professional, well-researched, and thoroughly forgettable. Then came Mama Hope. She walked onto the stage in a dress she had made herself, traditional fabric and vibrant yellows and blues, cut in a modern style that represented the bridge between her past and her present. She carried Hope and Victory with her, one on each hip, refusing to leave them backstage. If her story was about motherhood, then her children needed to be part of telling it. The audience fell completely silent. Fatima stood at the podium, babies in her arms, and looked out at hundreds of faces. For a moment, fear paralyzed her. What was she doing here? She was nobody. She had no education. She had no business speaking to important people. Then she looked down at Hope, who smiled up at her with complete trust, and she remembered she was somebody. She was a mother. She was a survivor. She was Mama Hope. "My name is Fatima," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "Though many of you know me as Mama Hope, I don't have a prepared speech with statistics or big words. I only have my story, and maybe that's enough." She told them everything. Growing up poor but hopeful, falling in love with a man who turned out to be a liar, the pregnancy and abandonment, the rejection by her family, giving birth in an alley, living in the garbage dump, selling trash to buy formula, the moment the president found her. But she didn't tell it as a victim. She told it as a testimony. "When I was sitting in that dump, holding my babies and wondering if we would all die there, I didn't know that hope was coming. I couldn't see beyond the next day, the next meal, the next moment of survival. But hope was coming anyway." She shifted Victory to her other hip, the baby's hand clutching her dress. "President Traoré did something extraordinary when he stopped for me, but here's what I want you to understand. It wasn't extraordinary that he helped. It should be ordinary. It should be normal. The extraordinary part was that I had reached a point where a leader showing basic human compassion felt like a miracle." The audience was riveted, many people wiping away tears. "How many women right now are sitting in their own garbage dumps?" Fatima continued, her voice growing stronger. "Maybe not literal dumps. Maybe it's an abusive home or a job that exploits them or a situation where they're invisible and hopeless. How many children are growing up believing they don't matter because society has shown them they don't? She paused, looking directly at the government ministers in the front row. Programs are good, policies are necessary, but more than that, we need to change our hearts. We need to see each other, really see each other. A woman begging on the street isn't just a problem to be solved. She's someone's daughter, maybe someone's mother. She has a story, dreams, value beyond her circumstances. Fatima's voice cracked with emotion. I'm standing here today not because I'm special, but because someone saw me when I was invisible. Someone stopped when everyone else was passing by. Someone chose compassion over convenience. She looked at President Traoré, who was sitting off to the side, watching with evident emotion. You saved my life, she said directly to him. But more than that, you taught me that I was worth saving. That lesson, that belief that I matter, is what actually changed everything, because once I believed I was valuable, I could start rebuilding. Once I knew I deserved dignity, I could fight for it. Now she addressed the full audience again. So here's my message. Every person matters. Every child deserves a future. Every mother fighting alone deserves support. Every person struggling in silence deserves to be seen. We can't all be president and stop motorcades, but we can all stop in our own lives. We can all choose to see the person everyone else ignores. We can all be someone's hope. She held up her babies, one in each arm. Hope and victory. I named them this because that's what they represent. Not just for me, but for all of us. As long as we choose compassion, as long as we choose to see each other, hope survives. And when hope survives, we can achieve victory over poverty, over inequality, over indifference. Fatima stepped back from the podium, signaling she was done. For a moment, there was silence, the kind of profound quiet that follows truth. Then the applause began. It started slow, almost tentative, then built into a thunderous standing ovation that lasted nearly 5 minutes. People were openly weeping, hardened politicians, cynical journalists, international experts who had seen everything. Because Fatima hadn't given them statistics or policy recommendations, she had given them something more powerful. She had reminded them of their own humanity. After the conference, things shifted again. Fatima was invited to speak at other events, universities, community centers, international forums. She always said yes, always brought her children, always spoke from the heart rather than from prepared notes. A publisher approached her about writing a book. At first, she laughed. She could barely write beyond basic literacy. But they offered her a ghostwriter who would simply transcribe her spoken words, and she agreed. The book, titled From Dump to Dignity, A Mother's Journey Through Hope, became a bestseller across West Africa.
A documentary crew filmed her daily life, sewing in her shop, caring for hope and victory, speaking at events, mentoring other single mothers. The documentary, Mama Hope, won awards at film festivals and was eventually picked up by an international streaming service, bringing her story to global audiences. But Fatima remained grounded. She still lived in her yellow house in the estate of New Beginnings. She still sewed clothes for regular customers. She still participated in community meetings and helped new mothers settling into the estate. Fame hadn't changed her fundamental nature. She was still Fatima, still Mama Hope, still a young woman who remembered what it felt like to be forgotten.
2 years after her rescue, on the anniversary of that pivotal day, President Traoré organized a special ceremony. The location he chose was significant, the very garbage dump where he had found Fatima. But the dump had changed dramatically. The government had cleared the garbage, remediated the land, and built something new in its place, the Hope and Victory Center, a comprehensive facility offering healthcare, job training, childcare, counseling, and housing assistance for vulnerable women and families. Hundreds of people gathered for the opening ceremony: government officials, international guests, media, and, most importantly, ordinary citizens, many of whom had been helped by the programs that grew from Mama Hope's story. President Traoré stood at the podium where the garbage had once been and spoke. 2 years ago, I came to this place intending to inspect construction nearby. But God had other plans. He brought me here, to this dump, to meet a young mother named Fatima who was surviving in conditions no human should endure. He gestured to where Fatima sat in the front row, Hope and Victory now rambunctious toddlers playing at her feet. I could give you statistics about what's happened since then. Thousands of women housed, tens of thousands employed, lives saved and transformed. But numbers don't capture the real change. The real change is this: we remembered our humanity. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. A nation is not measured by its GDP or its military strength. A nation is measured by how it treats its most vulnerable members. Fatima's story revealed our failure, but it also revealed our potential. When we choose compassion, when we choose to see each other, when we choose to believe that every life has value, we become the nation we were always meant to be. The president invited Fatima to the podium. She stood carrying Victory while Hope toddled along holding her hand. When she reached the microphone, she looked out at the crowd, then down at the ground beneath her feet. I used to sit right here, she said quietly, pointing to a specific spot, on a broken chair, holding my babies, wondering if we would survive another day. I could smell the rot. I could feel the hopelessness. I believed I would die here. She looked up, her eyes bright. But I didn't die. My children didn't die. We lived. We survived. We thrived. And now, on this same spot where I once represented despair, there's a center that will give hope to thousands of others. She smiled through tears. That's the power of choosing compassion. That's the power of refusing to look away from suffering. That's the power of believing that change is possible. After the speeches, there was a symbolic ribbon cutting. President Traoré handed the scissors to Fatima, and together they cut the ribbon opening the Hope and Victory Center. The crowd cheered as the doors officially opened, welcoming the first clients. Inside, Fatima walked through the facility, marveling at what stood where garbage once lay. There were medical examination rooms, staffed by doctors and nurses. There were classrooms with sewing machines, computers, and tools for various trades. There was a bright, cheerful daycare filled with toys and books. There were counseling offices where women could talk about trauma and healing. There were temporary housing units for those in immediate crisis. In the main atrium, a large photograph hung on the wall. It was the now famous image of President Traoré sitting on the crate next to Fatima at the dump, holding baby Victory. Underneath, a plaque read, "In memory of the day one person stopped to see another. May we all have the courage to stop, to see, to care." Fatima stood staring at that photograph for a long time, remembering that impossible day when her life had changed forever. A young woman approached her hesitantly, holding an infant. "Mama Hope," she asked quietly, I came here because I saw your story. I'm living in the market, sleeping in a stall with my baby. I didn't know where else to go." Fatima took the young woman's hand gently. You came to the right place. What's your name? Aissa.
Aissa, welcome. You're not alone anymore. We're going to help you, just like I was helped. What's your baby's name? The young woman looked down at her infant son. I haven't named him yet. I was too scared, like you were. Fatima smiled, remembering. Then let me suggest something. Why don't you name him Espoir? Hope. Because starting today, hope is what you have. Tears streamed down Aissa's face as she nodded. Hope, yes. Espoir. As Fatima led Aissa into the center to begin her intake process, connecting her with staff who would provide immediate help, she felt a profound sense of purpose. This was why she had survived, not just to save herself, but to be able to reach back and pull others up. The cycle of compassion was continuing, rippling outward from that one moment when a president had chosen to stop his motorcade and see a suffering woman as a human being worth saving. 5 years after her rescue, Fatima stood in her expanded textile shop, no longer just a room at the community center, but an actual storefront in downtown Ouagadougou. Hope Designs employed 15 people now, all women with stories similar to Fatima's, all given second chances. Her designs had gained recognition beyond Burkina Faso. She was exporting to neighboring countries, collaborating with international fair trade organizations, even sending pieces to boutiques in Paris and New York. But she never forgot her mission, making quality clothing affordable for ordinary people, creating jobs for vulnerable women, proving that success and social responsibility could coexist. Hope and Victory were now in kindergarten, bright, healthy, happy children who had no memory of those early months of suffering. They knew the story, of course. Their mother had never hidden it from them. But for them, it was history, not lived experience. Abu had reached out several times over the years, wanting to be involved in his children's lives. Fatima had eventually allowed supervised visits, watching carefully how he interacted with Hope and Victory. He was genuinely trying to be a father, though the relationship was complicated and probably always would be. Fatima hadn't forgiven him completely, but she had made peace with the past. She understood that holding on to bitterness would poison her future, and she refused to let him have that power over her anymore. More importantly, Abu had become an advocate. He spoke at schools and community centers about the consequences of abandonment, about the importance of taking responsibility. He worked with young fathers groups, mentoring men who were struggling with the pressures of parenthood. It didn't erase what he had done, but it meant his mistakes might prevent others from making the same ones. On this particular morning, Fatima had a special appointment. President Traoré was visiting her shop to see how she had grown the business. He came every few months, always unannounced, always casual, checking on her progress like a concerned uncle rather than a head of state. When he arrived, Hope and Victory ran to him immediately, shouting, "Uncle Ibrahim." He had insisted they call him that, rather than Mr. President, in private at least. "Look how big you've gotten," he exclaimed, lifting both children despite their protests that they were too old for that now. At 5 years old, they had strong opinions about everything. Fatima showed him around the expanded shop, introducing him to her employees, showing him new designs, explaining her export strategy. He listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, and offered suggestions from his own experience in business before entering politics. "You know what impresses me most," he said, as they sat in her small office, drinking Ataya tea? "It's not the business success, though that's remarkable. It's that you never forgot where you came from. Most people, once they achieve success, want to distance themselves from their past struggles, but you've made your past your purpose." Fatima smiled. "How could I forget? That dump, that suffering, it shaped who I am. And more importantly, it reminds me every day why this work matters.
Every woman I employ, every affordable dress I make, every time I speak about my story, it's all connected to those months of desperation." She paused, watching Hope and Victory through the window, playing in the small courtyard behind the shop. "You gave me back my life. Now I spend that life giving back to others. It's the only way the circle completes." President Traoré shook his head. "You need to stop giving me so much credit. I was just the catalyst. You did the work." "We can argue about this forever," Fatima laughed. "Or we can both accept that it took both of us, your willingness to stop and see me, and my willingness to fight for a better life." "Fair enough," he conceded with a smile.
As the president prepared to leave, he said, "I have something to tell you. The Hope and Victory Initiative. It's being studied by development organizations across Africa. Several countries are implementing similar programs. Your story has literally crossed borders." Fatima felt overwhelmed. "Countries? Plural?" "At least 6 that I know of. Ghana, Senegal, Mali, Côte d'Ivoire, Rwanda, and Kenya. They're all creating comprehensive support systems for vulnerable mothers, using our model as a template." He smiled proudly. "You've impacted millions of lives, Fatima. Women and children you'll never meet are living better lives because you survived, because you spoke up, because you showed the world what's possible." After he left, Fatima sat alone in her office, processing this information. Millions of lives? It seemed impossible. She was just one woman who had been desperate and lucky enough to be seen at the right moment. But maybe that was the point. Maybe every big change started with one person, one moment, one choice to do the right thing even when it would be easier to look away. That evening, after closing the shop and picking up Hope and Victory from school, Fatima took them to a special place, the Hope and Victory Center, built on the site of the old dump. She tried to visit at least once a month, to remember and to help. Tonight was intake night, when new clients came to register for services. The waiting room was full, women of all ages, some with children, some pregnant, some elderly widows. Each had a story of struggle, each was seeking hope. Fatima moved through the room, greeting people, offering encouragement. She stopped to talk to a teenage girl who looked terrified. "First time here?" Fatima asked gently. The girl nodded, unable to speak. "What's your name?" "Mariama. I'm pregnant. My boyfriend left, my parents kicked me out. I don't know what to do." Fatima's heart clenched with recognition. This could have been her at 17, scared and alone. "Mariama, look at me." She waited until the girl met her eyes. "You came here. That took courage. You chose to fight for yourself and your baby. That's the hardest part. Everything else we can help with. Housing, medical care, job training, we have all of that. But the courage to ask for help, that had to come from you, and you found it." Tears ran down Mariama's face. "I saw you on TV, your story. It gave me hope that maybe I could survive this too." "You will survive," Fatima said firmly. "You'll do more than survive. You'll build a life. You'll watch your child grow. You'll become strong in ways you can't imagine yet. I know because I lived it. And if I could do it, you can too." She sat with Mariama until her name was called, holding her hand, offering the kind of presence she had desperately needed 5 years ago. When the girl was taken back to begin her intake process, Fatima felt hope tugging at her sleeve. "Mama, why was that girl crying?" She knelt down to her daughter's level. "She's going through a very hard time, sweetheart, like Mama went through before you were born." "But you helped her feel better," Victory observed wisely. "I tried to. Sometimes when people are sad or scared, just knowing they're not alone helps them feel braver." Hope thought about this seriously. "When I grow up, I want to help people like you do, Mama."
She pulled both children into a hug, her heart swelling. "You will, my love. You both will. That's why I named you Hope and Victory, because you represent the best things in life. And I'll teach you that our blessings aren't just for us. They're meant to be shared." As they left the center and walked home through the evening streets of Ouagadougou, Fatima reflected on the journey. 5 years ago, she had been sitting in garbage, convinced her life was over. Now she was walking through a vibrant city, holding the hands of 2 healthy, happy children, with a successful business and a purpose that extended far beyond herself. The transformation still amazed her sometimes. Not just her personal transformation, but what had rippled out from that single moment when President Traoré had chosen to stop his motorcade. Hundreds of women now had homes in the estates. Thousands had jobs in job training. Tens of thousands of children were growing up with opportunities their parents never had. Millions across Africa were being impacted by programs inspired by her story. All because one person chose to see another person's humanity. All because compassion proved contagious. All because hope, once planted, grows in unexpected and magnificent ways.
That night, after putting Hope and Victory to bed, Fatima stood on her small porch, looking up at the stars scattered across the African sky. The same stars that had watched over her during those desperate nights at the dump now witnessed her peace and purpose. She thought about all the Fatimas still out there, the women suffering in silence, the mothers struggling alone, the people society had rendered invisible. She couldn't save them all. She couldn't stop every motorcade or open every door, but she could keep telling her story. She could keep employing women who needed second chances. She could keep showing up at the center to hold the hands of frightened girls. She could keep being Mama Hope. And maybe, just maybe, her example would inspire others to be hope for someone else. Maybe the businessman who started a foundation would inspire 10 more. Maybe the young man who heard Abu speak about accountability would be a better father. Maybe the girl she talked to tonight would one day help another desperate woman. That's how change really happened, Fatima had learned. Not through grand gestures alone, but through countless small acts of kindness, multiplied across thousands of ordinary people who chose compassion over indifference. The stars twinkled above, silent witnesses to one woman's journey from dust to dignity, from despair to purpose, from being forgotten to becoming unforgettable. And in the morning she would wake up and continue the work, sewing clothes, raising children, helping others, living proof that no one is beyond redemption, no situation is beyond hope, and no act of kindness is ever too small to change the world. Because she was Mama Hope. And hope, once kindled, never truly dies.